welcome to Indie Film Cafe Spotlight. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and I've got my co-host here who was my guest on the arcade episode that we did. Please welcome Dustin Hubbard. How you doing, Dustin?
Hey, I'm good. I'm happy to be back as always.
All right. And we've got two awesome guests here who worked on the movie Arcade. Please welcome Daniel Schweiger. How you doing, Daniel?
Great. Awesome to be here. Thank you for remembering our movie.
Oh, definitely. I don't think we'll forget it. And there's also Robert Meyer Burnett. How you doing, Robert?
I'm doing well, and I have to tell you, I mean, you know, it's because of Dan Schweiger I got to work on this movie, and it dominated a year of my life.
Nice. You were saying that earlier, so you said it also taught you everything you need to learn about post-production work and everything.
It really did. I mean, I learned more about post-production on films, again, thanks to Dan. And it wasn't going to be that way. You know, I wasn't going to learn nearly as much, but it's sort of the project evolved. It evolved because of well how the whole project came about. So it's sort of it's very interesting.
I'm sorry about this, guys. I have to turn the volume down on the answering machine.
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Ugh. All right.
Is that a regular answer machine for like a house phone?
Yeah, it's just so goddamn loud, and I'm really sorry about that. That's
how
one for your
20th century
bloopers.
of you, Dan.
That's one for your bloopers. This is how analog I am.
I don't see many of those these days. So there you go. They do exist still, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I think my parents still use that, you know. But you know, anyway, yeah, that's awesome. I think I talked about it on the show before, but basically I got into it years ago when I saw it on video cassette and everything at my local video store. And I got it because Peter Billingsley was in it, you know, and I was like a huge Christmas Story fan. So, of course, I had to rush out and rent that then. And then I bought it on DVD years later. And I still love it, you know. We showed it for one of my birthday parties. I had to show it to some of my friends. Yeah. Well, so, you know, and Dustin can, you know, kind of say that stuff because he's a huge fan. But like, I think some people are huge arcade fans and actually do love to show it to other people. Would you agree, Dustin?
Definitely. There was a long period of my life where actually when I had first seen Arcade, you know, we had a lot of drama going on at home and stuff. Arcade was sort of like cinematic comfort food for me. I used to watch it once a week, regularly. You know, and it got me through some times. And you know, as I got older, I moved from Indiana to Florida. I ended up, you know, getting a certain friend base and worked at a movie theater, and a lot of people that I worked with there used to come over and we'd have big movie watching parties. And one thing I always made sure everyone had to see was Arcade, and never once did I show it to anyone and they had anything narrow or negative to say about it. Everyone always loved it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No bullshit. They loved it.
I agree. Like, my buddy Paul, who's part of my Indie Film Cafe, you know, podcast. He was the moo cow that I think Daniel, you know, that Daniel. Did you know? Like, were you a little confused by like a guy talking at the end of the show, like, you know, before or whatever?
Can you? I'm a little confused as to what you're asking.
Okay. So on the show that we did, the podcast that we did of Arcade, there was a guy at the end who goes by the name the Moo Cow.
Oh yeah.
Were you a little confused as to who this guy was? That just
No, not really. He just seemed like another segment of the podcast. You know, just another dude. And again, I loved what he had to say. You know, again, I'm just thrilled that people actually. I thought it was kind of almost like a forgotten film, even though it meant a lot to me and Robert. I remember, you know, Rob, remember the website that whole kind of empire of sites that Hulk Hogan destroyed. There was like one of the sites, and I remember, and I can't find it on the net, but they did a whole thing called Bad Movies We Love about Arcade. And I'll never forget finding this. And it was awesome. Actually, it was a really nice article kind of extolling why they liked it. And I can't find this, but I absolutely remember finding this on the net like maybe 10, 12 years ago.
But in terms of movies, it has a really interesting story, because if it wasn't for what Dan did, you might never have seen Arcade.
But I'm sorry, Rob.
Oh no, I was going to say, I mean, Dan really, you were given the task to resurrect this movie sort of bring it back from the dead, as it were.
You know what's really weird? There is a version of this film that you guys were talking about in your last podcast with all the terrible old effects in it, but I think the editing may have been the same. I don't know how it got made.
It wasn't the same.
It wasn't the same, yeah, but it was kind of the original. Yeah, but that was the movie. I mean, basically what happened is that, I was working at Full Moon. I was doing all their movie trailers and promotions and stuff, and obviously my goal was to direct there. And Charlie Band came to me one day and said, we got this movie and it is just utterly unreleasable. And, they wanted to make it releasable, on a budget, obviously. And I saw it and I just thought it was just like the worst effects I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it looked like worse than Doctor Who when it came out in terms of effects. And, I realized, just what we'd have to do to make the movie barely cohesive, given what we had. And, I basically came up with I rewrote the script, using the only stuff that we used was David Goyer's script was the kind of the story and what was said on screen. But basically once they went into the computer world and they were wearing helmets, which obscured their mouths, we could write anything we wanted to and create the story in the game.
Rewriting David Goyer.
Yeah. It's still one of his best scripts. No, he's done good stuff. But yeah, and basically, Robert, I think you had started on kind of like just helping at Full Moon at that time, and we had known each other.
Yeah, no, you hadn't brought me on. This was the first thing I did for Full Moon.
Right, yeah.
Was, and what Dan did, he called me up and he said, this is so crazy. He goes, I want you to go in and help the assistant editor of the movie is now going to go back and reconstruct. They did a new transfer of the negative, if I remember correctly,
yes,
onto
right.
And they transfer the negative, and this was only done at standard def, because the post-production was all going to be done on tape. We were doing post-production on 3/4 inch, maybe it was digibeta. We were cutting on 3/4 inch, so it's a tape, so we had to cut linearly. And what I would do is help the assistant editor, and then we are going to just drop the new effects in and keep the movie the way it was. Now, this movie was originally edited before Dan was involved in about a week. They spent 7 days cutting it, so it's not like it was the best cut movie in the world. So I'm like, okay, well, what Dan didn't tell me was that it was Peter Billingsley himself who was the assistant editor of the movie.
Yeah.
And the reason he got involved in the film in the first place was because he wanted to learn post-production. And so he was the assistant editor on the film. So I go to the post-production house, this great house called HMA Video that was on Olive. Not Olive, it was on Victory, the corner of Victory and Olive in Burbank. And it's pretty cool. It was this Tudor place. You remember, Dan?
Of course, yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah. So I go into this edit bay, and an edit bay is like a small room with a setup on it, multiple tape decks, and like there was 2 chairs in it. I go in there, and there's Peter Billingsley. And I thought that I'd like gone into the wrong room. And I'm like, dude, you're Peter Billingsley. You didn't shoot your eye out, kid. I'm sure he's heard that a million times. And then I'm like, I think I'm in the wrong room. And he goes, no, we're working together on Arcade. And I'm like, really? and this began a relationship that went on me with Peter. He and I did a lot of stuff together, but it was so cool because he was such a cool guy. He was really nice and really down to earth, but he had cut this movie before. So our job was simply just to reconstitute the movie as it originally was and drop in the new effects that Dan was having made. And that's what we were supposed to do. And Dan was working with a company called DHD Post-Image.
Post-Image.
And were they in Montreal?
Yeah, and I went there. I went to Montreal. I mean, basically, we got a lot of pitches from a lot of different companies, but I really liked DHD. And again, you have to remember this was really in the infancy. Even though Lawnmower Man had come out, you still weren't seeing a ton of CGI stuff. And I mean, again, what we were trying to do was like literally the money for one lunch at the Lawnmower Man set. But again, DHD had a great pitch. I really liked them a lot. And then I basically went down to Montreal, where my cousin actually was living at the time, and I stayed with her, and just kind of they went through how they were gonna get the blue screens, how they were gonna essentially fill up the blue screens, and how we could I think we recut all that game stuff. Actually, from what I remember, we did recut a bunch of the stuff in the game. Yeah,
we recut everything.
Yeah, including the live action stuff.
Yeah, and what was neat about what you guys did was, what people don't understand is Arcade was shot on 35 millimeter film, except the in-game stuff was shot on videotape. All like you said, Doctor Who. So Doctor it was shot on, I think it was shot on, if it was Digibeta or Betacam or something. So you know how it's like a soap opera is shot on videotape back in the late 80s, early 90s. So you could never end up having you could never have a high def version of this movie, because that stuff was shot on tape, NTSC videotape to begin with. And now we were finishing on NTSC video. So Dan had to go and figure out a way, how can we make this videotape footage look good? Because
they had Film Look. I remember Film Look at the time.
Yep. They had to do all that.
All the film. I mean, basically, again, I just surrounded myself with people who knew what they were doing. I think any great director,
And you really were redirecting these sequences.
Yeah.
I mean, you were redirecting your whether it was the full-on CG stuff of like the skull fighters, and
we had like a day of second unit where we actually went and shot, like whenever they'd look at their hand or their arm, we'd shoot the arm stuff, and we figured out what we needed in terms of doing additional second unit stuff, which I ended up also doing on the Lurking Fear, where Bob and I played albino cannibals.
Yes,
and basically figured out how do we tell the story? How do we make this as even though it was just nonsensical, I still I came up with the whole idea of the kid being like an abuse victim. That was my idea, I mean, just to try to give some kind of reason for what was going on, because it made no sense. There's a whole ending where she shoots herself, and I couldn't figure out how the hell it made no sense. So we came up with the idea of the keys of if she kills herself, she gets the final key or something, like that. So again, that's all stuff that we created to make this releasable and remotely understandable.
Well, so when I was looking at all this footage, because I was new and full of piss and vinegar, and I'm looking at this with Peter, and I said, we're looking at this footage. I go, because I thought it was nonsensical too, but when we started going through all the footage, because they transferred all the negative, it was all there, and I said to Peter, I go, dude, there's a lot more of this movie that was shot than was ever edited. And he says, well, yeah, I mean, and I go, but the movie's incoherent, but you have all this footage that we can put back in the movie that could make it better. And there's all these scenes that were, and Peter's like, yeah, but that's not our job. I go, oh man, I'll call Schweiger up and tell him, and I remember calling you, and I said, Dan, there's a much better movie here than originally existed. And we kind of had a conversation, and I don't know what you did on the Charlie side, but we were given the go-ahead to recut the first 10 minutes of the movie. And so we could do anything we wanted. And so that's what Peter and I did. And then if Charlie Band saw the first 10 minutes and approved it, because they had to approve more editorial time. They had to spend more money.
Yeah.
So, and this, it takes a long time to edit a movie, and we were editing on a tape system. So you would edit it on videotape, and if you wanted to change something, you had to go back and then rebuild every edit up to the point where you were.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was in the nonlinear era of editing that we all live in now. I cannot tell you what a nightmare proposition this was, and how it would drive Peter Billingsley and I crazy. And we were there. We would go to work at 9 a.m. and stay till midnight. like, because we didn't have that. If we didn't, we'd still be editing right now, 20, 30 years later. And so we started doing this, and they showed, I guess we gave the 10 minutes to Dan, and you liked it, and Charlie, I guess, approved. Do you have any memory of that? About
well, so much of this is, I forgot so much of this, Robert, to be honest. I completely forgot this. I mean, I mean, as long as you're telling me, I'm sure it happened. I mean, basically, when I was at Full Moon, I would do these video zones, and I would, I didn't do like the actual 10-minute making of within the video zone, but I did everything else for him, including writing and doing all the trailers. And it was like, I would like always be begging for money and freaking out because we, went over budget with the video zones. And again, I have to stress that I think the only time I ever had even a crossword with Charlie was over the budget of Arcade, because I was just determined to make this as good as it possibly could, because this was kind of like my movie, in this kind of weird way. And, basically I fought with like, and I still kind of fight, okay, can you give me more time? Can you give me, more money? And I think he was impressed and just kind of got what we were trying to do, just to do something of quality.
Yeah, that was exactly like Peter was in the movie, obviously.
Yeah.
And once we had the green light, now once we were able to, because we were supposed to finish this in like a week or something.
Oh yeah.
And we were there for months.
Yeah.
Months.
Yeah.
And
Charlie,
then the money ran out, and I wasn't even getting paid anymore. I don't even think Peter was getting paid anymore. But we were so invested. They were paying for the post house, obviously, but we were so invested in getting this done. And one of the things that happened is, like, when Dan started giving us these effects, there's one shot of an energy ball coming around the corner.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah.
And I said to Peter, I go, because it's just one shot of this one angle, I go, it's a video game, so we can take the same shot, and on video we can have it this way so the ball goes this way. Then we can duplicate the shot and turn the shot this way so the energy ball goes wow, wow, wow. So you've got 3 shots, and we just turned it upside down and moved it around, creating, so our one effect shot turned into 3.
Right.
So we were creating more stuff that was going on. And then, like, we would ask Dan about things like when you see the full-on arcade machine and it's got the television screen on the outside of the machine.
Right.
Like, there was nothing there. And so we were able to take, we were able to take like Dan would do an effect shot of the arcade talking. Well, we were able to, because it was video, and insert that effect shot that was never supposed to really be there. We could insert it on the outside of the machine to give it more production value. So there was a lot of digital, trickery that we just had in the post process. And once we figured this out, and Peter and I are like, we can do anything. Like, the way we would, and if we wanted Dan to write something else, like, hey, we need more dialogue. We've now just stretched out a conversation. You would write more stuff. Like, Dan would write more dialogue, and we would put it in, and it was a really, and Peter and I were sequestered away, and all we had to deal with was Dan. And Dan was like, whatever, he was looking at what we were doing, and he was liking it. And then,
again, I had tremendous respect for you. Number one, how to get girls, dude. Again, that was free. That's the whole free enterprise thing. But no, I still am in awe of Robert. And again, I have to stress, Robert really, knows what he's doing. And
well, there were girls in the edit bay.
There were. I didn't
Peter and I, we were, And I'll tell you something. Another thing that Peter and I would do. The colorist on Arcade was a guy named Bob Sachter. And a colorist is a man who you transfer the negative to tape, but then a colorist will go in and do you remember Bob Sachter, Dan?
Yeah, I probably do.
Yeah, because he worked on a lot of Full Moon stuff. So the colorist would balance the colors, change the colors, and make the colors look the way they're supposed to look. Well, Peter and I had lots of questions about post-production, because neither one of us we were going to take this movie all the way through to the end, and there was things we didn't know. So they had a post house. The color house was ADS, Advanced Digital Services.
Yeah.
And they were right down the street from a place called Little Tony's Pizza that was on where the corner of Lancashire and Vineland meet in North Hollywood. So Peter and I would go, and we would have like questions that we would want to ask, but we didn't want to seem like we didn't know what we were doing. So we would take Bob Sachter and some of the guys at ADS out, and we'd buy them pizza and beer at Little Tony's, and then within the conversation, we would slip in questions that we didn't know the answer to, and we didn't want to seem stupid. But since we're eating pizza and beer, it was casual. So we'd be like, so, when we're doing, this or that, or when we need things to run at 30 frames as opposed to 24 for video, can we do that? And they would answer the questions like, oh, yeah, as they're stuffing their face with pizza and drinking beer. So we didn't look stupid, and so we sort of learned our way through post-production by doing that.
I mean, I'm sorry, Robert.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, what was particularly cool for me was coming up with some of the visual concepts. Like I came up with the dragon was me. The race car was me. I storyboarded the entire sequence, like literally the 1 minute kind of Tron chase. I completely storyboarded that and just came up with that entire idea. And that's kind of like the one real moment of animation in the whole movie. But again,
it's awesome.
Yeah, but I storyboarded that. I came up with the idea of Arcade's lair, with the whole idea of like toy robots was my idea. The whole idea of like a little kid, in there, so all that stuff I came up with. But what was really cool, again, because, the kids were like in this machine, again, as Bob was talking about with the blank video monitor, you could like put in anything into those monitors.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I really have to stress that, the movie would not exist without Rob and Peter, just working their asses off.
I looked upon it as, Dan was, you were always buried under work. You were doing like 10 different things.
Yeah,
but
Arcade was number one.
And Peter and I we looked at it as an opportunity because I'd never worked as an editor on, by the way, the editor credit on Arcade is Miles Winton.
Yeah.
And that was the name of the original editor's dog. That's not even the name of the original editor.
Yeah,
his dog.
Who was the editor?
I forget his name. But Miles. So the actual editor, that was the contractual editor credit. So Peter and I end up getting additional editor credits, very nice credits at the end, and the end titles are big credits. But another thing that we got to do is, it took us months to get this done, but Dan's obviously big into the film music world, and the sound designer of Arcade is Alan Howarth.
Yeah.
Who worked with John Carpenter on many of his iconic scores, like Escape from New York. And I think it was you, Dan, who said, yeah, we're going to go to like Alan Howarth's house.
Yeah.
Remember that? We'd go to his house and he would play us sounds and stuff. It's the coolest thing ever.
He did like the sound. The thing, first of all, I want to go to the dog. Miles Winton was no P.H. Fosdick. I'll just tell you that much, okay? He gets that. Alan did all the sound. Number one, I was a huge fan of Alan and John, obviously. I think what I'm angry about it myself is that I kind of, for someone, now I do so much articles and stuff about film music. I really kind of micromanaged Alan way too much on the score, and I think it would have been a better score had I not been like this punk kid, trying just to do. I learned a lot of lessons on that film. And that was one, is this basically, because I had very specific ideas as to what the music should be doing. And sometimes I felt it was just kind of lying there a little bit. I'd still love to see the soundtrack come out. But again, for me, but Alan was a great guy, and I worked with him on pretty much a ton of stuff, like for Full Moon. He's a great guy. And I was just an odd to be working with someone like that. And also, actually, one thing I'm really proud of are the songs in the movie. I think are actually pretty good. And I worked with the guy who was Full Moon's kind of rock and roll guy named Pat Siciliano, and Dean.
He was a character.
Yeah, he was awesome. But we got some really cool songs in that,
Yeah.
And he found all the songs, and so I'm pretty proud. And again, I have to stress, even though Albert Pune basically had like no involvement, I think the movie still, one thing Albert can do, he's a number one, he's a lovely guy. But he really, knew how to shoot. Even that, he was like chugging stuff through Full Moon like Doll Man. He had like a whole deal with them, to do all these movies. And I'll say one thing is that he had a really good DP, and I think the movie looks pretty good in spite of whatever the movie.
Is it George Moradian?
Yeah, maybe George Moradian shot it, but I thought it looked great. It looked really good.
I mean, it was cool. I remember there's one scene when it's at the character of Alex, if I remember, and she's sitting in front of the TV and she's all like arcade. That was a really fun scene to cut because there was all this extra footage, and we were trying to create a suspense scene where all hell is breaking loose in the house and the energy is coming out of the TV. That was my favorite. It took us a really long time to cut that scene, because there's a lot of cuts in it, a lot of, when you're cutting it on a tape system, it was a pain in the ass. But it was, when we were cutting it, we're like, wow, this is pretty good. You know, we were, because of the photography, and there was some really cool practical effects happening. They use wind machines and stuff. And it had neat stuff in it. Like, I remember, Dan, we would get in shots. We wouldn't get in all the shots at once. You'd get them in as they were finished. And we'd get the shots in, and I remember when we saw the skull fighter, or whatever that is. Remember it forms?
Yeah.
That I was like, this is awesome. Like, I thought it was really, really cool, and it would energize us. Like, oh my God, look at this! You know, we get to put in these things.
I wish I could find because I have this stuff. I have the designs and I have the drawings that were done, and I can't find it, but I know I have it. It is somewhere. And I mean, for me, for me, it was really, because, I'm such a huge fan of actors. I mean, number one, it was cool for me to work with Peter Billingsley. I had yet to see Death Valley, a great movie. Wilford Brimley. Sheriffs, what is it with sheriffs in those movies? They should be smarter. But anyways, going back, I mean, I love doing the ADR. That was really cool for me. We got to meet like everybody, like Megan Ward, Seth Green.
Yeah, they all came in.
They all
AJ
came in.
Langer and
John Delancey, and they're awesome, wonderful, excellent people, and
they were into it too. Like, they were all stoked that the movie was getting finished. Because they'd done it like 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago or something. So, and by the way, because we would hang out with them, and they were delightful people. Seth Green and Megan Ward were very, very, very cool.
Yeah, they were
very
great.
Nice.
And, for the voice of Arcade, I always knew that I was going to affect the voice of Arcade. And so I auditioned a bunch of people, like Forrest Whitaker's brother came in, the kid who was the voice of the cat in Hocus Pocus came in. And ultimately I went with, Jonathan Fuller, who had been in Pit and the Pendulum for Stuart Gordon. And I became, Stuart Gordon, again, who passed, unfortunately, really changed my life in a lot of ways. And again, Pit and the Pendulum, I met Jonathan, who was just a lovely guy. Now he's a teacher. And he just gave a great reading, and I really had him go through it. And then Alan Howarth affected the voice, but I just wanted to work with an actor who I really, really dug, and I knew could kind of really put his soul into it. But again, we were always gonna mess up the voice.
Yeah But it was cool. The voice was cool.
Very.
Alan's music is amazing in the movie too. Like, I feel like the music itself also adds a lot to it, and everything. So,
such a huge fan of Alan. And,
they used to have awards, like home video awards, every year, and Arcade was nominated for Best Independent Direct-to-Video Release of 1993, and it lost to another Full Moon movie.
What was that one?
Dragon. What was it? Dragon World.
Dragon World. Great movie.
Lost.
Actually, one of Full Moon's better movies.
Actually, one of Ted Nicolau's best films.
Yeah. So it lost, which I didn't feel bad about. I mean, I couldn't believe that we took. I've always said to people, and maybe I'm being too disparaging, but I said we took a movie that was completely unwatchable and turned it into something that was really mediocre. But that mediocre was damn watchable. No, I mean, I'm really proud of that, what we did. And, it was because of that movie that I became a film editor. Everything that I had learned, and I based on Arcade, I went into film editing, and all through the rest of the 90s, I edited a lot of first-time directors, low-budget features that people hadn't seen. And even to this day, I mean, I recently edited a film, and it's all because of Arcade. Tango Shalom. Yeah, I produced a film, an indie film called Tango Shalom. So it was Arcade that put me on the editorial path. And soon after we finished, I worked at Full Moon. Kind of had a little bit of an implosion later, and I ended up going to work at a ad agency that had just bought what's called an Avid. and an Avid is an industry standard. It's editing software. But back then they made their own proprietary equipment. And it was because of Arcade, I got this job editing for this ad agency. And I started editing non-linearly, and it would have made our lives so much easier had we had that on Arcade. But it really, Dan hiring me on to do this changed my life.
Yeah, and it's interesting again that after you left, Dave Parker came in to kind of work at Full Moon, and then
we worked together.
Yeah,
because after
did Dave work on Arcade? Like
no, he didn't, but he was he was already working for you during Arcade. Like when we were doing Arcade, Dave was there, and then after Arcade was over, I came and started working full time at Full Moon. And I was working under Dave, like I was doing Torchlight, our sort of erotic thriller label things. And I worked on also, it was the first time I ever worked on behind the scenes material. That I later became a DVD special features producer. And the first behind the scenes documentary I ever worked on was for a movie called Spirit of the Night. Spirit of the Night.
Got you hot.
And the Torchwood film. And that was interesting, working with all the people. And by the way, working at Full Moon, I mean, Dan, I don't even remember, but like Charlie was going to start a comic company. And when we went to Comic-Con in 1994, Charlie like had this gigantic Full Moon booth. And it was awesome. That year is when I met Mark Altman and Chris Gore. And we had like the best Charlie wasn't paying us then, but we had the best time. He owed us all money. We're all down there and he's buying classic comic books. And we're like, wait, you got to pay us. But it was the best time working at Full Moon because the facility was great. They were making like a movie a week. It was a dream. It was a dream working at Full Moon for that little bit of time that I was there after Arcade. It was like the greatest. And we wrote I have it.
Oh, wow.
We wrote treatments for Arcade sequels.
Yeah, I worked with you on like this insanely ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, you and I came up with the ideas, and then I wrote it up as a treatment called Arcade 2 Electric Nightmare. And then we had at the end of that, there were two other ideas where we were going to combine Arcade. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Colossus, the Forbin Project.
Of course, yeah.
But at the end of the you have. But at the end of
I have the Blu-ray. Yeah.
The fourth Arcade movie was going to be Arcade. Now was housed in the Grand Canyon. It was like in Colossus, the Forbin Project, and at the end,
not Superman 3.
No, and Jack Death from the Trancers movies.
Oh my God!
Was going to show up. So the fourth movie was going to be called Arcade 4: Death to Arcade, except it was DETH, as in Jack Death. I have it around here somewhere.
Holy God!
And the treatment for Arcade 2 is actually, it's really good. It is really good, and
it was hugely ambitious. It was really.
We never could have done it.
Never could have made it. No, it was. Because again, I would always just go for it. Because I'm just Rob is like, again, I have to stress, if you're looking at all the great DVD supplemental stuff that's being done now, Rob really was the granddaddy of doing these things, like a Tron documentary that was longer than Tron. I mean Rob really was one of the guys who really started the supplemental ball rolling.
Well, yeah, there was a group of us there. It was weird because mostly it was companies, companies that would do, but there were a few of us that we consider ourselves auteurs, documentary auteurs. As a matter of fact, Dave Parker, who I was working with, who Dan also hired. You hired Dave, didn't you?
I did.
So Dan hired Dave. Dave and I, in 2008, I produced a movie called The Hills Run Red, and Dave directed it. And it was because of Dan that the movie even got made, because he put his friends Carl Morano and John Carcietta onto us. And we just it just got put out by Scream Factory on Blu-ray.
You mentioned that in the Blu-ray, because if you do, I'll buy it then.
I think we do. I think I do explain that. And then so we Dave and I did 6.5 hours of special features for the Blu-ray that just came out.
I think it's pretty damn cool.
And here we are. We started doing special features because of Dan Schweiger. We were working at Full Moon. I was working on Spirit of the Night documentaries, and that's how I met like David Starzyk, who's a good friend of mine.
Great guy.
He was in Spirit of the Night, and it was if Charlie had kept if Full Moon didn't have this sort of implosion at the time, we all would have been directing movies.
I would have ended up directing, absolutely. And again, it's like I find personally no romance in what I call the spam eater stories in the LA Times about I ate spam for a year, I almost starved to death, but then suddenly I had my big break. Well, no, fucker. I'm actually lucky because I got paid at Full Moon. I never had the check bounce personally to me, although I had to like constantly tell people they were going to get paid. And I really tried. But the thing is, I was not going to have like the subsistence kind of living thing. I wanted to have a decent lifestyle, and when Full Moon imploded, I just realized I had at that point, temp tracking kind of came in, and I was doing that at Full Moon. I was like doing demos for Sliver. I did the Sandlot when I was at Full Moon. But at a certain point, I had to make a living, and that was kind of unfortunately it for directing. But I was set to direct until everything fell apart. But again, I have to stress what a wonderful place it is still. But hands down the best creative job. I love my job I'm in now, which I've had for 2 decades. It's still the best creative time I've had in my life, bar none.
Oh.
We walked in with a wonderful group of people. It was just it was a big family.
I mean, it was, you can't understand. You're in a building where on one floor, which is kind of like a warehouse, they're building sets and shooting movies. Then there was an effects house where they're building, stop motion animation or creatures or something. And then you go upstairs and there was an espresso bar, and then there's the executive offices where Pat Siciliano was and everybody else that worked. Charlie was there. Albert was there. And you're just wandering around the halls, and all our job all day long was to make movies.
Yeah, it was a great place. And I love Charlie Band. He was great to me. Him, Albert, everybody there were awesome.
And he was great to us to let us recut the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I've met him a couple times, and this last time, or so he was that I met him. He was talking about the new stuff that he's doing with basically revamping a lot of stuff, bringing a lot of stuff back. His 10 movie
Deadly 10 project.
The Deadly 10 project. And one of the things I did mention was, are you thinking of doing arcade, in some kind of way or whatever? And he is interested in, like, he wants, if he ever does another Deadly 10, arcade is on an interest of being like remade or.
No, I mean, God Almighty, what you could do with it now. You could even do a video game with it. I mean, literally,
exactly.
You could do a video game. Yeah, I mean, again, it was just a great, and I have to stress, when I joined Full Moon with Puppet Master 2, doing all their promotional stuff, and really Charlie pioneered a lot of stuff. He pioneered home video, but in terms of made for movies, specifically made for video, Charlie was a real pioneer. And really, some of these movies, had a decent little budget, and he really tried to do quality productions. Some of them were pretty awful, but a lot of them were pretty good. And
I think the Subspecies movies are good.
Yeah, they are. But then after the implosion, the quality went. I mean, I know you guys, but to me, my Full Moon is the Full Moon of up to Puppet Master 6. That era to me is the Full Moon that I know and love. It's hard for me to kind of watch how low budget it all got. Yeah, I can't.
That was the thing. Like each movie, I think the budgets of these movies were like they were $1 million, and Charlie would take $100,000 for his fee because he'd come up with the ideas, and then they were made. But then the budgets got lower and lower and lower. But another thing that people forget about Full Moon that I think is really important is they had an output deal with Paramount Pictures. So even though these movies were made for direct-to-video, Paramount was putting these out, so they would go to a lot of places. They had great distribution. And that was key to the early 90s, mid 90s Full Moon, because they had such great distribution, which ultimately led to their demise because Paramount found out that movies were not done that Charlie said were done and things like that. I mean,
costing more than, and that was the end of it. I mean, I even did like a whole promotional thing called Brand Managers in the Sixth Dimension. They literally had it was like a movie with the managers of the product. That was even fun to do that. I was able to do this really cool Lurking Fear commercial teaser.
I remember that.
like using miniatures and forced perspective. And I had the idea of that. I had the idea of doing the subspecies trailer where you actually went into. So again, it was just like a real love of movie making there. And again, it's like if you could do it for a budget and figure out a way to do it, you could do it.
Charlie would do it. He'll be like, I'll do that.
Yeah, it was totally, just a great creative I cannot stress how creative and creatively inspiring it was.
And the thing is, you really could. I didn't realize like the idea of recutting Arcade was not out of the realm of it. I wasn't asking for something that was pie in the sky. It was like, well, if you can make it better, I mean, it was okay. There was a little bit of leeway there as long as it didn't cost horrible amounts of money. And if it had stayed there, like Dan said, there was so much creativity going on everywhere. Like if you walked around and just like all day long, you could literally watch movies getting made.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like a giant studio backlot. It was a pretty contained, but even the building was cool.
I would like go to the stop. I would like totally watch Dave Allen do stop motion.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to like this. They're shooting Shrunken Heads, and Screaming Jay Hawkins is there. It was incredible. It was a mini studio. It was a legit independent mini studio.
And making movies every month. Like there was a new movie getting made a month. It was incredible. The output there was incredible.
Two a month or so.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a great time.
Yeah, it was. What is there any dark secrets of Arcade that you guys would like to know?
Yeah, Dustin, you go.
Oh gosh, I'm kind of like shell shocked by all this information. I know that was Arcade shot simultaneously with Dollman. Do you know that?
I think it was.
It was. And it was very funny because sometimes we get slate boards that said Dollman on them. It was Arcade, and he was literally going back. It was completely shot at the same time, concurrently.
Oh,
Apparently, Albert Pune was going in between one set to the other.
So with that being said, I mean, obviously, Dollman, I'm assuming he stayed more married to professionally. How did his exit come about with Arcade?
I wasn't there for that.
Basically, it's so funny. I gave Albert some grief about Captain America, but of all the first 10 minutes of it are okay. Albert's a great guy. He made Sword and the Sorcerer, which to me is one of the truly fun, kind of maverick fantasy films ever made. Albert is an extremely colorful filmmaker, and he was, just making a lot of, he's kind of like an awesome hit and run director. He'd make this, he'd go on to the next. And I think, maybe he felt that he had finished the film and and it was time for Dollman. So basically it was Charlie's decision that, that it needed a lot of work.
Mm. You see that a lot. I mean, that happens a lot in even regular Hollywood films, that the projects get recut by the producers anyway, because they don't like the most notorious one was Daredevil. That got a huge recut from the producers, and some of it didn't even really make as much sense, and stuff like that. And this time it actually was to fix the, independently. When an independent producer has to step in, it's usually to just fix things, to just, to make it makes a little bit more sense.
Well, I was going to say that I think that one of the problems was also and it wasn't Albert Pune's fault. Technically, the in-game effects footage just didn't work in the original version. Since you guys have seen the original stuff, it just didn't work. And I don't necessarily think that's Albert Pune's fault. He wasn't. He's not an effects guy. And they tried to do something that it didn't work. And I really think that's sort of what torpedoed the original release of the first version of the film, is that Paramount looked at it and said, guys,
yes, I think you might be right.
We can't put this out. And that was that was not Albert Pune's fault.
I have no doubt that by that time he was probably already on to some other set, because he was especially throughout the 90s, he was such a directing nomad. He was literally just like from set to set to set. He literally had such an insane amount of output throughout the 90s. But I know for a fact, at least up until maybe a year or so ago, he said that he has never even seen the final completed least version of arcade.
Yeah, I believe that.
So,
I believe that. Yeah. But he was a lovely guy. I have to stress, Albert was an exceptionally nice person. You know, when I got to meet him at Full Moon, but again, you know, when I took it over, I never really talked with him at all. He was just on to whatever he was doing. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a director like that, you know, a lot of times they just, it's like if they do 2 or 3 movies a year or something, you know, like I believe he did. Like he did, you know, he did Kickboxer 2, then he did, you know, and he did Arcade, and he did like, you know, Captain America, you know what I mean? Like he did all of these things like back to back to back. That it's just like, you know, after a while, he's probably just like, okay, well, you know, I've done my part. Now I go on, do the next thing, and then.
Well, he was like, you know, that's how TV works, really. Like if you're a director working on a TV show, you direct it and you get to do a cut. A director does a cut quickly, but then they're dismissed and the producers take over and they finish cutting the episode. So really what we did, I mean, Dan was, I would call Dan, you were the executive or the supervising producer of Arcade, and then we edited the film. So it was very much like a TV. It was done like TV, and Full Moon felt almost like you were doing TV episodes because there was so many movies that were being made and they were all in various stages of completion. So it wasn't like, you know, you work on a movie from beginning to end, it could take years, but at Full Moon, it was this constant, things were constantly being made. So it was
a cool factory. You know,
it was a cool factory.
You know, to your TV, you know, they had David Nutter. He did Transfers 4 and 5 there. He became like the most prolific TV pilot director in history and made some fantastic Game of Thrones,
X-Files.
I mean, but he really kind of helped. He got us started Full Moon.
Well, I'm guessing that's the thing. I bet he learned from Full Moon what to do and what not to do for like working in the environment of television. But these days, televisions even seems like a normal movie, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's been evolved even more. So it's crazy how things have changed.
I think one of the sad things about where we're at today, I mean, there are companies like the Asylum that made the Sharknado movies, and like Anthony Ferrante, who was another journalist, you know, part of our, he directed the Sharknado movies. But I've always been surprised that another Full Moon like entity that was interested, because like the Asylum was making, you know, the crazy animal movies and the Sharknado films, but Full Moon tried to make legitimate,
absolutely,
you know, the movies like Subspecies films. If Full Moon had survived and been there while digital technology increased and you were able to create mountains in Carpathia or whatever, and Full Moon could have been a place that was making incredible genre cinema for little money, because all the tricks that everybody was learning would have just been retained by the company. And I'm very surprised. One of my dreams has always been to find, like, instead of $1 million, I think the number now would be like 5 million, what Blumhouse is doing. But Blumhouse, they're making movies about ghosts and things, but to do films with lots of digital effects and lots of monster effects, nobody's doing that. Like, I would think that, and I thought when we were making The Hills Run Red, that Silver Pictures, we were supposed to make 10 movies there. And I always wanted to resurrect a film, I still do, a film company where all of us, everybody I know, Dan, Dave, Darren Scott, we would all start a company where we would have an output deal with a Netflix, and we would be making a movie a month, you know, like Full Moon, except we'd be using modern sensibilities, modern technologies, and we would make legitimately straight up cool, a cross between Full Moon, Hammer horror, you know, and we'd make movies that were highbrow, like the Quatermass movies or something like that, you know, with all kinds of monster effects, and nobody's done it.
Yeah,
you know, nobody's done anything like that, and it the Asylum is the closest thing, but their movies weren't exactly highbrow.
No, I have to really stress that the worst movies are people who knowingly set out to make a bad movie. Okay, let's make a campy bad movie, and you're just going to get a really obnoxious, bad, boring film.
I hate that.
And you know, and I'm not a fan of Asylum or anything. You know, I don't get it. I just don't understand it. I don't think there's anything fun in making just purposefully bad material. But I have to say that at Full Moon, they never, even when they did something like Shrunken Heads, which I really, enjoyed, it wasn't like, okay, we're going to make a stupid film.
No.
All these movies were legitimate movies. They were not trying to be stupid. They were even seeing people for what it is. It's like they're trying to make actual movies. They're not trying to make a bad movie.
Real quick, I just want to mention before I forget that I actually just acted in an Asylum movie. So.
Oh my god!
Oh,
okay,
really?
Congratulations.
No, it was awesome. I got to work with Eric Roberts, so like,
that's awesome. Oh my god!
Yeah, it was a dream come true. And no, I mean, I don't think, and I can disagree because, like, I worked with them on that, but I've seen a lot of their movies too. I don't think they set out to make bad movies necessarily. They just they tend to kind of know like the genre, like how to make campy movies,
right?
And everything.
But that's that's
Full
just
Moon didn't make campy films. They didn't.
Yeah,
Full Moon didn't. No,
we're talking, but we're not. But Full Moon ultimately did go in that insane direction.
Yeah.
But when I was there, they did not do those. They would end up making Asylum-like stuff. But when we were there, Evil Bong. But when we were there, they did not do that stuff.
Ginger Dead Man.
I think the thing with the Asylum is that I feel like their sensibilities really fall in line with like what Sci-Fi Channel does, and now obviously they're kind of part of Sci-Fi Channel and all that, so they just make that kind of very silly, cartoonish CGI Aladdin.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that stuff.
That, they don't really always have a lot of depth or anything, but I mean they can be fun watches. But
yeah, I mean I think there's
Full
people
Moon was
like them
trying
and
to do like really high concept stuff.
I mean I just think that it could have been a
killer shark movie.
Yeah, it could have been great. I think it would be great to have somebody that's trying to do highbrow horror and science fiction along the lines of Outer Limits or classic Twilight Zone and slasher movies and do them for. I mean, Blumhouse has their model. They make movies for $5 million and under, and if they turn out great, they've got Universal to distribute them theatrically or whatever. And I think that's really cool. It's just a question of where do you get that financing? Like, I would love it if somebody gave me like, $15 million. Like, okay, kid, go make. Well, I'm not a kid anymore, but okay, go make 3 movies and do what you're trying to do. And if you were doing it for a streaming service that they're going to spend that money anyway, and you could make, I don't know if have you guys seen Karen Kusama's movie, The Invitation?
Mm.
Oh, I
heard of it.
Yeah. You guys watch The Invitation. It's on Netflix. Don't read anything about it. Just watch it. It takes place in a house. It takes place it's a dinner party at a house. And I would be like, if you could have a company that was making movies like that. And the thing is, you want young talent. You bring in all this young talent, really talented VFX artists, people that want a shot. Because the technology is so advanced now, there's a lot of really talented people that you could put to work. And if we had a Full Moon, you could crank out some amazing stuff that I think people would love.
And I have to, we got to get a free enterprise mention in there because Bob, you you essentially parodied yourself.
Yeah. It's hard. Look, one day I hope to get it out in high definition or 4K, but I co-wrote and directed a film called Free Enterprise that starred William Shatner, and a lot of it was based on what happened to me while I was working at Full Moon. And Dan and Dave Parker play themselves. Dan's in it, literally playing a character called Schweiger, and it was a send up of all of that, and it in the movie it's called Full Eclipse instead of Full Moon, but and Charlie agreed, like he said we could use stuff from Full Moon, and we did, and there's even a character that's sort of based on him in it, played by Carl Bressler, and that's how fond I made that movie. We made that movie in 1998, and it was just 4 years after Full Moon sort of imploded and became something else. But yeah, I mean, I loved my time at Full Moon, and I have Dan to thank for that.
Well, I'll just say that, like, okay, so back in Virginia, I'm living in LA now, but when I was back in Virginia, I would have a friend of mine come over who would watch whatever, a movie every Sunday night, like our Sunday night movies. And one of them he brought over because I usually pick, and then the next week he'll pick or whatever. And he picked Free Enterprise. And at first I was not interested in it. It wasn't because, it sounded like a bad movie. It just was about Star Trek. And I'm not a Trekkie guy, or whatever. I don't like it. And he was like, oh, it's much more than that. You need to check this out. It's really good. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. I loved it. Absolutely thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. It didn't if it were literally just about Star Trek stuff, I think I might have lost interest in the first whatever, but it was more than that. It was about filmmaking. It was about the love of, of all of that stuff, and I just enjoyed it.
Well, I think one of the things that people forget, and Dan has spoken about this already, was to be younger men. We were younger in those days. I met Dan on what's now the Sony Pictures lot, and we both turned up really, really early to see a screening of Jacob's Ladder.
But only the first hour because the second half sucked.
Well, yeah, but it was because Jacob's Ladder was called one of the 10 greatest unproduced screenplays in Hollywood, and Cinefantastic magazine had covered a first incarnation of it. So, and Dan and I met 30 years ago this year.
Oh my God.
Oh wow.
And it's Dan, 30 years, man. We've known each other for 3 decades.
You haven't aged. I think both of us have fairly good genes because we don't look terribly older.
No. I tell people, I'm like, I'm 53. People are like, you're 53, and I'm like, yeah, man, it's all good. But to be young in LA at that time, I don't think there's anything like that now.
No.
And you could be working over on the beach in Venice with Roger Corman. They were making stuff at the time. Concord was there, but Full Moon was, I thought, a better place. I mean, Concord was even lower rent than the Full Moon. Yeah. Full Moon had these posh offices, and we had an espresso bar, and it was to be young in LA. The possibilities of what you could do and what was going to happen, it was wonderful.
It was very envious of your possibilities.
I don't know if there's anything like that now. I just think the world is just a different place. I mean, we didn't have social media, and so when you went to work, you didn't check your cell phone. You were sitting in a wonderland where you'd walk out the door. You might be editing a promo. You'd walk out the door and just walk on set and watch them film something. You never know if they're going to have monsters on set, or there was going to be an action scene, gunfire, whatever. You just didn't know what you were going to see. And your mind was completely immersed in the making of movies.
Especially if you're, for me, it's like going to the Universal backlot to shoot Puppet Master 3 with Walter Gotell. Holy shit. Dude.
General Gogol himself.
Yes, that was pretty cool, man. I was just I'm still in amazement whenever I get to talk to or meet these people, or to be, I just love the magic of film. I'm not jaded at all. I love movies, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, Dan, but the first time you had me come down to the set of Trancers 2.
Yes.
When they were shooting at Union Square or Union Station.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And I met, who was the director?
It was Charlie. Charlie directed Trancers.
No, he was directing, but the other guy who directed all these other movies that at Full Moon, huge Full Moon director, not
Jeff Burnett.
No, not Jeff. God, he directs a lot of gay films
Ted
now.
Nicolau. Oh, David Dakota.
Dave Dakota, and he was producing, I think. So, and I got to meet him, and then I ended up going to the Trancers 2 rap party and playing pool with Helen Hunt.
Nice.
And I was like, "You're pretty cute." So
you can say you were mad about her.
Well, yeah, and she was kind of aloof, but it was still weird. I don't know where that was, but I just remember playing pool with Helen Hunt and going to the set because they shot Blade Runner at Union. They shot so many things at Union Station in LA, but that's where they were shooting Trancers 2, and that was the first time I went to a Full Moon set. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, dude, it's totally again, if you loved movies like Robert and I did, it was just awesomeness, to be a part of this world, that little kids dream of. Because again, it's LA is where it's at, dude. It really, there's just, and hopefully will be again.
Yeah, I happened to move out literally in January. like right before COVID hit. So this is like the worst year to possibly move out, right? But you know what? I mean, I'm sticking it out, like.
Yeah, I mean, it'll change.
Yeah. I mean, it's they're gonna have to figure out something or other. Period.
Yeah. I mean, and and Full Moon's smart because they got into the streaming business and everything. So this is like the perfect time right now because a lot of people are at home not doing anything. They can start watching those Full Moon movies that you guys created and you guys worked on and everything now because they have that in their library.
And Charlie did something brilliant. Right before COVID hit, he bought the rights to an 80s zombie movie. I was on a panel with him about a month ago, and I think it's called he made a movie called Coronavirus Zombies, and he bought an old Italian movie. It's kind of like the Woody Allen film Bananas. So he took this old Italian movie that he bought the rights for, and then they shot a bunch of wraparound stuff, and they made this new movie using this zombie footage from this old Italian film. And it's pretty funny. I mean,
the original movie is called A Hell of the Living Dead, I believe.
Yes, yes. Hell of the Living Dead. And it's correct. And I'm like, what a Charlie Band thing to do.
And now he's got the Tiger King guy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They just wrapped, I think, the third installment of it.
What do you know what it is?
It's Barbie and Kendra in Space Force.
Well, there you go. They're just gonna keep doing these as long as they can, right?
But again, this was not the world that Robert and I were in. This was not the world.
No,
we were in a bit of a more elevated for what this stuff was.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like you think about the movies, even the Puppet Master movies were cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the Subspecies Lurking Fear, another H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. There was a lot of really great stuff going on.
And Pendulum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Dr. Mordred, Doctor Strange.
Oh, my God. The set for Dr. Mordred was amazing. I mean, Charlie, again, he had great concepts, and he was really pretty ambitious for the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, again, to be on that set, to go to the Museum of Natural History and watch them shooting the plates for the dinosaur battle at the ending and watching him shoot that kind of battle, with Jeff Kober and Jeff Combs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because Charlie coming out of the Empire days where they were making theatrical films, Stuart Gordon doing Dolls from Beyond and Reanimator and Robot Jocks and these movies were all theatrical films. So Charlie came out of that world, and Full Moon was a little bit of a step down, but they were still aiming for that kind of quality. They wanted them to be theatrical.
I think Puppet 2 was, I think.
Yeah, well, remember when we went to Comic-Con in '94, they brought Oblivion down.
Yes.
With George Takei, this Cowboys and Aliens, and not the Jon Favreau film, but it was great. I mean, that played theatrically, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were trying to do that. And Dustin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like with the Deadly 10, they were trying to kind of recreate they had a little bit of money, so they were able to kind of make more movies, and they were trying to do 10 movies, back to back to back, but it didn't pan out really the way that they were planning.
I presume there was a decent amount of paycheck from the deal with Cinestate where they had licensed the rights to revamp Puppet Master and redo Castle Freak. And they were going to do, 10 movies back to back. They were going to release them all originally on the same day on streaming. It was supposed to be like February 4th this year, I believe. Obviously, that didn't happen. But they shoot 10 movies, like 4 or 5 of them were original concepts. The others were going to be sequels. And the catch was to live stream the entire production online. So you would watch the movies be made from day one.
Yeah, that was an idea I wanted to look into as well, that you would actually crowdfund and make people the studio, make the crowd, you could do that. That'd be interesting to do.
They ended up only getting 4 of them in the can. Ouija's Halloween Night, Necropolis Legion, Blade, The Iron Cross, and Femalian Cosmic Crush. And then the pandemic, lockdown, everything happened. And The next one was technically Subspecies 5 Blood Rise, and once the pandemic is under control, that is supposedly what the next actual thing will be.
I wonder if they actually shot it.
Huh?
Yeah, I love Denise stuff, by the way. And big props to Tom
Denise
Nicolau.
lives like an hour north of me now. Moved down to Florida about 2 years ago. So
she's a lovely person. Again, you just got to work with wonderful, really just great people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. It seems like back in those days, I mean, you were mentioning Jeffrey Combs. I'm a huge, like I got to meet him at a convention recently, and I was just in awe of like being around him, like he's just such a great guy. Everybody there seemed like really amazing people, and it just seems like it's sad when Paramount pulled out and they just kind of went in a different direction, but I mean, it happens. I mean,
I love seeing the resurgence of Barbara Crampton.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I interviewed her for my show. What a delight she is.
Great person.
My God,
Wonderful.
do I love her.
Everyone around Stuart who really changed. Again, I cannot tell you what a huge difference Stuart Gordon made to my life, and got me to temping. Just a good friend, and I mean, I'm just so sorry for his loss. But he really changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you brought him. I mean, he gave me notes on Free Enterprise. He came to more than one screening of it and gave me notes. And then director Darren Scott, who directed like Deep Blue Sea 2 and has been working with Rusty Cundiff doing Tales from the Hood 2 and 3. He and I were working with Jeff and Stuart trying to raise money to do Nevermore.
Yeah.
The one-man show. We came close, but I mean, I'd still love to do that, but unfortunately, now that Stuart's gone, it would be kind of weird. But
yeah,
it still should get made.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up here. What I want to know, what have you guys been up to lately, Daniel?
Well, I have I work professionally. I do temp tracking over at the Formosa Music Group in Hollywood, and I've been doing that for like decades. I've helped out, oh my goodness, like I work in the Addams Family. I temp tracked First Contact and Insurrection, which is still unmatched in my life. But I've done like dozens and dozens of films. I do liner notes. I just had Sliver come out, which was fun to write about.
By the way, that just showed up at my house.
Oh, excellent. I hope you enjoy it.
When you mailed it to me, I was like, wow, because you didn't tell me you were sending it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to surprise you, but that was actually one of the very first films I ever temp tracked, so that was fun for me to write the liner notes, and I've got some cool stuff coming up. I'm doing a Zoom like essentially a composer video cast called Film Music Live. It's on Facebook at the Film Music Network page, and I'm married to Penka Kuniva, and again, it all kind of ties together because Penka co-scores with Joe Kramer, who did a Mission Impossible film, Pandora, which Mark Altman is a writer and producer on.
He's in Bulgaria now, producing season 2.
They are shooting it in where you can shoot stuff, thank God. So they're shooting season 2 right now, and Penka will be scoring season 2 with Joe Kramer. So yeah, I'm keeping busy, and doing a lot of liner notes. I was supposed to act in a movie that would have been awesome, a reboot of Psycho a Go-Go, but then again, Corona hit, so it'll probably be Psycho a 2 Go-Go from 6 feet away if they ever make it.
All right, well, what about you, Robert?
Well, I recently finished producing and editing a low-budget indie. I call it an indie Jewish spiritual family dance comedy fable called Tango Shalom, and right now it's being shopped. I something's going on with it, but they won't tell me what it is. So it's something good. So hopefully it'll show up at, I don't know, streaming service or whatever. And then I've been working on a Netflix anime series.
Oh, wow.
That has not been announced, and I can't tell you what it is yet because it's not my place to announce it. But it's an anime series that had a 3-year commitment, a 3-season commitment. And yesterday, what I do is I'm the animatic editor. So I do the final pass on the animatic, and then what I do gets delivered back to the animation company, and it goes and gets animated. And we finished the penultimate episode of we just finished the penultimate episode of season 2.
Oh.
So yeah, we got that, and that is supposed to drop on Netflix, I think, either in November or December, and then I can say what it is. But I've done so far 15 episodes of that, and then I had just had The Hills Run Red come out on Blu-ray. So, and I'm trying to. I guess I can say this. There's a friend of mine and I came up with an idea for a show that has some movement. It's such a crazy. I can't tell you what it is, but it's wacky if we get to do it. It's just this. It's a wacky documentary series, but it has nothing to do with filmmaking or anything like that, or horror. It's a heartwarming, family-friendly series that would be so much fun to make if we get to make it. But I'll know. There's a big meeting on Friday, and I'd be able to tell you more about it then. But if it goes, it'll be cool.
That's awesome. And Dustin, tell us what you're up to.
Well, on Monday, a movie I'm producing called The Choice started shooting in Maryland.
Congratulations.
Great.
Thank you. It'll have Eric Roberts attached as well. He's doing some voiceover work for it, kind of in a torture porn type thing in an escape room. He's basically the voice of the Jigsaw, type
Right.
master of the situation. So that's shooting now. I'm just kind of, other than that, I mean, I'm in Florida, so I'm just sort of waiting it out because we're sort of like the epicenter of a lot of infections right now. So I can't really do much beyond, mask up, go to work, and come home and hide out. So, but I've got stuff waiting. I finished revising a script that I wrote many years ago called I Love You Less, a slasher thing I want to hopefully do later this year. And I'm waiting to do some second unit photography on one that I did last year called Jekyll versus Hyde that I'm hoping we can get in the can soon. Just a matter of when, and I have a couple coming out on DVD later this year. Ouija Mummy, which I wrote and produced, will come out in October, and Like Animator, which is a title nod to Reanimator with a werewolf, comes out in November. So
that's great.
Great. I'm just kind of waiting things out till the world goes back to normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time reorganizing my Blu-ray collection.
Yeah.
I have been traversing the island of the Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, I want to play. I heard that game is amazing.
It's fantastic. I'm so sucked into it. Oh my god.
I brought a whole bunch of my Blu-rays from Virginia out here and everything, I brought all my Blu-rays, but I have way too many more DVDs, and so those are back at my studio in Virginia, for the Indie Film Cafe studio. But it's crazy. It's like, I'm a collector, I'm a hoarder. So
God, I spent so much money on Blu-rays, dude. Oh my god.
I know.
Me too. Like the Arrow sale, the Warner Archive sale, and the Criterion sale all hit at once.
Oh my god, I went nuts.
I'm not even going to be able to afford right now because of just crap that's going on to the Criterion sale, which kind of annoys me that I can't even buy one. Maybe I will, because I think it ends in like next week or something.
I think it ended.
Yeah, I think it ended.
It's already ended.
Yeah.
Oh well, I missed it. It's okay.
I keep wanting to. I every time they have a sale, I want the Ingmar Bergman box, but they didn't have it this time. They were like out.
Oh, damn.
I hope they make more.
But the Bruce Lee one is, oh my god, it's incredible.
Yeah, I got that. I got the Bruce Lee one.
Great.
Yeah,
really,
it's great.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show and everything. This was
what a walk down memory lane.
Oh my god, thank you so much. Again, really, Arcade really meant a lot to me and Robert. I mean, I put my heart and all of us put our heart and soul into it. So it's really great. You think that people forgot about it, and it's just great that it has fans. It blows me away. It amazes me, because again, this really, it's kind of like, of anything I've done, this is like the most me of anything, where I really put everything into it.
Yeah, before we wrapped, I wanted to ask you guys, did you ever really think, and I'm sure people get asked this kind of thing all the time, but did you really think that 30 years later you would still be talking about this movie and the trouble and the drama and all of the hard work and the blood, sweat, and tears and the no paychecks and stuff, to try and get this movie done. Did you ever think that it would be a relevant thing this far into the future and that it would have actually had the impact that it has had? Because I do what I do today because of movies like this. So
no, I mean, it really means a lot to me when you can positively affect someone's life and make them want to make movies. That really means a lot.
I think, to speak to that, it kind of, in terms of the work that I've done, it defined how I approach anything I do, because I'm like anything. I've worked on a lot of, I would call, low budget stuff that was of, well, let's say dubious quality. But you can always bring something and make something better. Mm-hmm. Like I've never, Arcade instilled in me the idea of, we can make this the best we can. And no matter what it is with Arcade, because we had the ability, and through Dan and through Charlie allowing us to do this, if we could make it better, we would. Like Dan talking about working with Alan Howarth and pushing him, and now you think back on it, well, okay, maybe I was too hard on him, but at the time we would push to make Arcade the best it could be. Like, we never thought, that's good enough.
Never. No.
And I think we're talking about it 30 years later, because for whatever reason we instilled something in a movie that really had no right to have anything like this instilled into it. But I think all of that extra blood, sweat, and tears, and we'd polish things up and spend a little bit more time and hours in the edit bay, and Dan going up and designing shots and implementing them, all of that collective effort proves that even on a low budget, programmer that Full Moon was making, that effort affected people. And you guys are talking to us about this movie because at the time we never just said, whatever. We made it the best we could.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. Like I said, I love it because I remember watching it years ago and everything when it came out on VHS, and to see it, still be around and be on Tubi. So for other people who, may not have had the opportunity or whatever to watch it,
where can people see it? Because I just wanted that, and I've gotten into fights with you about. I just think, just put it out, man. It's going to be the quality it is going to be, but I want this movie out in Blu-ray, dude. Period. I want it out.
Well, they could definitely do an up conversion of it.
Yeah. Let's get it out. I'd love to see. Again, I have the regular DVD of it, but I have
the laser disc.
Yeah,
I want to see this come out in Blu-ray.
Yeah,
I have a bootleg DVD of the original effects cut.
Oh God, that I don't want to see. I
watched it before this, and it reinstilled the fact that the completed version is infinitely superior. And I'm a lifelong Full Moon fan. I was there the day the very first Puppet Master was put out on the shelf. And
oh wow!
I was a fan from.
So you can see how much work we actually did do.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's evident because they're two completely different, very opposite films.
Yeah.
And the original version, it doesn't flow. The music doesn't work, and it's got bad takes. It's just not there. And
it's terrible.
It is. It was honestly, I hadn't watched it in that version in maybe 2 years, but it's hard to watch.
Yeah,
I never actually watched it. I didn't want to watch the original version, and once we started redoing it, it was like, what was done before it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not really worth it, honestly. So watching that as opposed to, because I've seen the released version probably 100 times.
Oh my God, dude!
So I know it forwards and backwards. So
more than I do.
Yeah. So watching the original cut is.
Well, thanks to your petitions as well. That really means a lot.
Yes, I will always try and champion this movie.
I would love to see this
as much as I have breath in my lungs. So
well, it'd be great if we had the money. It'd be great to go back and scan the negative at like 4K. And then go and redo the effects again.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Make them look like they did, but we could make the effects so much better.
Oh my God, dude, that would be a dream come true.
Well, like I said, I would really love to see like a Blu-ray, and I would love to have you guys in commentary talking about it or whatever more. And
I'll dig up the sketches finally and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'll find the treatments for the sequel.
Yeah, and
amazing.
get like Peter Billingsley to to chat with you guys about
You
it.
can find him. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, he would too. He had a good time. We had a blast.
Great guy.
Yeah, no, I adore that he was a big part of it, and I adore that he was like, what I really liked about it was he was not the romantic interest though, like in the movie.
No, he's a character.
He was just a friend to the main girl, and I think that made it a sweeter story. You know, it wasn't like, oh my God, she has to go and save him or whatever, and he's like the whatever. It's like they're best friends and they're helping each other. I absolutely adored that. I thought, and Megan was amazing. Everybody that worked on this film as actors, Seth Green, you know, all of them. I mean, if I ever meet him, I'll get him to sign an arcade. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to the effect of that whole Peter relationship in the movie with the Nick character, like there's dialogue in the original cut that makes the Alex character look, for me as a viewer, kind of unsavory, because he tells her, he's like, I have feelings for you, Alex, and she's like, she just cuts him off. It's like, I have a boyfriend, and she's just kind of like, very off-putting and stuff. And I think that a lot of the editorial choices removing specific bits like that actually help.
Yeah, I remember that going.
Very strong, specific final girl that is very relatable. I've noticed something in my writing over the years where whenever I write scripts, I tend to write lead characters who have dead parents. I think is probably, now that I'm thinking about it, originates from an obsession with this movie. Even though her mother's dead, her father is essentially, a walking corpse. He doesn't really say or do much. So
she even said he might as well be dead in the movie.
He might as well be dead. Yeah.
I mean,
so, he's no function in life. So
I just rewatched it last night. That's how I know that line, like, and everything. But yeah, I rewatched it on Tubi last night, and it was just like, this is, just to get ready for this and everything. And I thought,
what's Tubi?
Oh, it's like it's a app, for a free streaming app,
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, and it's you can watch it on your Amazon Fire or whatever.
Oh yeah, link it. You should definitely link it.
Yeah, it's there. You can see it. Arcade is in the world. It's in the air everywhere.
It's out
exactly
as we speak.
So yeah, you can see it on Full Moon Streaming, or you can see it on Tubi. I think there's other free ways to see it if you want to, because I mean, that's really what it is about. Is about seeing it, and everything, and people, checking out a film that 1993 that came out then. That's, I mean, what a fantastic year too. Like,
God, that's so crazy to think about. 93.
It's wild because I feel like it is a classic in the canon of Full Moon. For me, it's the penultimate Full Moon movie next to like Bloodstone Subspecies 2. I think it's just there are two. I think the two and maybe Shrunken Heads. They're the three that are like just perfect.
Wow! Movies. Oh my God! Thanks.
But they, I feel like as the years have passed, Arcade is, even though I feel like in the grander scope of the library, it is a classic. But I feel like it's one that gets pushed to the side and sort of falls through the cracks a lot. So that's another reason why.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I feel like it's just there because it was never branded. I feel like there were.
Well, it doesn't really feel like a Full Moon movie either.
Right.
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't. There's no small creatures running around or naked women. So.
Yeah, it feels more like a real Hollywood movie, like a. The stuff that you would see out there, even especially having Peter Billingsley's name at that time. I mean, people are really, really getting into Christmas Story at that time, because when A Christmas Story first came out, nobody. I interviewed Zach Ward recently, and he was in A Christmas Story. And he talked about how he was like nobody nobody cared about Christmas Story when it first came out. It caught on video, you know, and I feel like this movie might be that too, you know.
It's like the TBS or TNT like 24-hour loop they play every Christmas.
Yeah,
they should do that for Arcade. TBS and TNT should play it on an ultimate loop.
That'd be great.
It's just so funny to think it was that long ago. You know, I guess it was such a fun.
Yeah, I feel like if it had been branded more by the company and they had actually followed through with some level of sequels or spinoffs or something, that it probably would be looked back as more of a crown jewel in the overall library. I even have somewhere, I have the old Fangoria issue in a box here somewhere that even announced Daniel.
Oh yeah, the old art, yeah.
Well, if we ever were allowed to continue on, like if Dan directed the sequel and Peter and I either produced and edited with you or something, it would have been a kick-ass movie. You know, it would have been a great, I mean, Arcade would have been a great franchise if they kept it going. Because imagine if what we could have done if we were building it from scratch as opposed to doing a retrofit job on something somebody else did.
Yeah, well, it's once again, it goes back to like Dustin mentioning like the Jigsaw kind of character thing. You know, Arcade is that kind of thing. Like it's a being, you know, supernatural being or whatever.
And now with the technology and the internet, Arcade could go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
online gaming.
Yeah, online gaming, perfect.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Arcade zombies across the world.
Exactly. I would watch that, you know. So you guys should talk to Charlie and see if you guys can, you know.
I wish I had that pipeline on, man. I had, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, I did a panel with him not a month ago, so.
I'm gonna shout, man.
Reach out to try. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much, and
thank you. You're
thank
awesome.
you so much.
Thanks,
no, we really appreciate it. This is an awesome talk, and we got a lot of information out in one episode. So we really appreciate this, and you guys are welcome back anytime. If you guys feel like you need to talk about something else that's going on, or want to get some stuff out there or whatever, just let me know. You guys are definitely welcome back, and Dustin, thank you, because without your talk on Arcade and getting the interest some more again, you know, having these guys on here, I mean, I think hopefully more people will just rediscover or discover, you know, Arcade, you know, and
yeah, hopefully they will. Hopefully the masses will take notice again, and we can get some kind of forward momentum going for that Blu-ray release.
Yeah. Exactly.
Would be the ultimate goal to me.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We
Thanks
appreciate everything.
Thank you.
You guys have a great day.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys later. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.